All right, I think we are live, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to our review of WWE Crown Jewel 2023. The fifth Crown Jewel and one of many Saudi shows. And also on top of that, my co-host Callum went to the Wrestle Talk watch party for it.
It was a grand old time in jolly old London.
Yep, those are always fun, aren't they?
Yeah, it was. It was very much a lot of fun. Got to talk to Dan Layton about football for a bit, which was fun. Talking about because we both support the same club and how we're currently quite shit.
Dan Layton has like a list of topics that he always talks about, and football's one of them.
Yeah.
The other stuff is like Kelly, Natalia, The Miz.
Those and drag queens.
Yes, drag queens. Yeah.
No, it was a good talk though. It was a very good, fun talk.
It's possibly the most bisexual man I've ever seen. Not confirming that's who he is, but just his energy. His energy is very bisexual because he's got a bit of everything.
He's a very flamboyant person.
Yes, and he's friends with what's his name? The ASTF movie guy. What's his name again?
Oh, Tom Scar.
Tom Scar, that's right. He's friends with Tom Scar.
Yes.
And did skits with him.
Yes.
But you know, apart from that, how was that watch party? How did it go?
It was good. It was a very good atmosphere. Think in terms of anticipation for the show, I think there was probably the least amount of hype going into it. I think out of all the other ones, I think you could tell, considering the booking, which is not surprising. But I think overall it was a very entertaining night of wrestling from my perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, to talk about the show, I actually thought this was better than I expected.
I would say, for me personally, it's about what I expected in terms of quality.
I wasn't sure why I had such a... Maybe it's just the Saudi stink, but I had a bit of a negative...
Yeah.
Not a massively negative expectation, but I had somewhat of a negative expectation of it. And really, there was only one segment on this show that I thought was really shit. And that wasn't even the match.
Yeah, one that went into the delves of I don't want to watch this. Then yes, I agree. At least only one segment was in that sort of category for me.
But in terms of the wrestling card, I actually thought this was quite a solid show.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid to good wrestling show.
Yeah, well, I mean, given that, you know, Fastlane and Payback were quite low key outside of maybe one or two matches. And I mean, I guess Payback was very much carried by the tag match. Everything else was a bit.
It was, yes, it definitely was. Yeah, looking back on it.
And then SummerSlam was a really mixed bag, like extremely mixed bag, from like great to terrible.
Mixed bag. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, this for me was probably the most consistent WWE pay-per-view since Money in the Bank. Maybe not the best one, but it's. I
think it certainly have been better.
Yeah. Yeah, overall, it was definitely a long show, but I thought it was decent.
It didn't feel like it went that long for me, because the last couple shows that have started not at the regular time, actually started earlier than I thought it would, and it only went like what? It was only like
it was 3 hours 37.
3.5 hours. Yeah, it's only 3.5 hours.
If you include the kickoff match, it's 4 hours though.
True. That's a good point. But started at 5 o'clock. It's 5 p.m. for us in the UK, and finished around just before 9, which was actually a really good time for me.
It wasn't as long. It didn't drag as much as SummerSlam. That was just ridiculous.
When the show, I was craving it all night. After the show finished, I was like, right, I'm going to go and walk to the nearest McDonald's and just get a bunch of chicken for the journey home because I was very hungry
Well,
by the time the show ended.
I imagine these pay-per-views are a lot better to watch when you're in a room of people.
Yes, definitely. I would say so. There was a very good atmosphere then, and I've got
Yeah.
a couple stories to say, at least in terms of crowd reaction to certain matches, because
Oh yeah.
there was a lot of really good moments for specific moments.
Yeah, see, well, I wasn't in a crowd of people. I was in my bedroom at like 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. or whenever I started. I had it on one screen, and on the other screen, I was like modding my EA Sports Rugby 08 rosters. That was my night. You know, I've been I downloaded like a mod that has all the World Cup squads, and then I'm currently adding all the old legends in it. So I got all these big super teams. I used to do this series on my other channel many years ago, like near the end of high school, because that was 2 World Cups ago, where me and my friend played we made our own like custom tournament with every team in the games. I think it's like 70 teams. And I plugged in my Xbox when I moved into the new house. I plugged it into the TV, and I basically spent hours taking pictures of all of the teams on the rosters and all of the attributes of the players I wanted to copy over. And I've been slowly like transitioning it to my PC, where I've got a modded, updated version with better graphics and better gameplay. Yeah. Anyway, that was my evening, but I enjoyed the wrestling, which was actually
Yes.
a nice surprise.
Mm-hmm. A lot of really great moments.
It really
in terms
was.
of individual moments. There's definitely stuff coming out of it that I'm looking forward to going forward.
Yep.
In terms of stories.
And unlike the last 2 pay-per-views, they actually did stuff with the presentation this time because it was in a bigger venue.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Lots of big jewels.
Very different. Yeah, very different staging to the last couple Saudi shows. It felt a lot more. It felt a lot more house showy than grand scale to me, anyway. In terms of I don't know if I felt like a different venue to the normal ones. So it did. It had a different kind of like in terms of stage vibe, I guess, for me personally, in terms of how I saw it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think in terms of initial reaction, I was not disappointed by this show overall. I thought it was a fairly good show, I would say.
I would say the crowd was very up and down. Some matches they were
There's
really
one
into
match in
it.
particular, I think I could tell there was one match in particular, the crowd at the actual show was very much just dead for, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that I don't want to get into politics, but I know that Saudi Arabia is not the biggest fan of women's wrestling.
No.
Which is a shame, but it's the way it is. It's not like they shit all over it or anything, but it just feels like they kind of just sort of tolerate it.
They don't really, they're not that into it.
Like they understand why it's happening, but they just sort of tolerate it as opposed to really enjoy it.
Yes.
But I think at the very least, it's better than a few years ago when they didn't have any women's matches at all. Like, you know, when they did the first Crown Jewel in 2018 and they had to do that Evolution pay-per-view at opposed to it.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we should start getting into the specific matches.
Yeah, we should. So for the first time in seems like over a year, or since Clash of the Castle, yeah, so over a year, we have a pre-show match.
And you know what's so funny? On the Wrestle Talk podcast review of this, they brought up the exact same thing that we did in our predictions, which was the last pre-show match, which was Clash of the Castle, Macat Moss, and the Street Profits versus Austin Fury and Alpha Academy. And they actually forgot, despite Ollie talking about it in his review, they forgot that Madcap Moss was in the match, which was quite funny.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, we literally talked about this. We literally talked about this like yesterday. It was quite funny.
Yeah, Madcap Moss isn't even with the company anymore.
No. But yeah, Sami Zayn versus JD McDonough.
You know, the funny story about this is that I went to watch the pay-per-view and I watched the Rollins McIntyre match first, and then I went to my notes about our predictions to put the scores down. And then I was like, oh shit, there's the pre-show match. So I pressed pause on the pay-per-view and went to YouTube and watched the pre-show match second. But yeah, Sami Zayn got a massive ovation in Saudi Arabia, which is great to see, given there's this...
Yes.
It's a very meta thing because he was banned from going there for a long time because obviously he's half Syrian.
Yeah, so... Yeah.
Politically speaking, they're in opposition.
It's always good to have... You can see how much it means to him.
Mm-hmm.
Both times he's come to these shows, the last two shows, you can see how much it means to him. And his sort of reaction from the crowd is always quite... It's at the very least, it's quite heartwarming to see.
Well, the fact that, back in 2018, there were three things that were kind of that the Saudi show really had going against it in terms of who could be on it. In the sense that Sami Zayn wasn't allowed on it because of, he's Syrian. You also weren't allowed to have women's wrestlers for a bit. And then also John Cena refused to be on the shows at the time because of what was happening in the news. Because he didn't want to associate with that kind of violence. So the fact that now on this show you have Sami Zayn women's wrestling and Cena all on the show again, it kind of shows how things have healed. And it seems almost, I could be wrong about this, there could be backstage stuff I don't know, but it feels like the relationship between WWE and Saudi Arabia is getting healthier than what it was when it started.
It's definitely, despite all the, and we'll probably actually, I'll reference it a little bit later, but the very clear propaganda that only really seemingly happened in the early shows. You can't deny that they are improving things because you look at the first and you compare it to this show now, as we've mentioned. What they're doing is important. You've got two big women's matches on this card, and one of them especially was presented as a megastar, which we'll get to later. So you can't deny that. But what is quite funny is, I don't know if you watched it or if you had it on your feed, I don't know. But they very much, they broadcasted a very big propaganda Saudi Airlines commercial with Bianca Belair, LA Knight, Drew McIntyre, and someone else that I can't remember. All just talking about how great Saudi Arabia is and how great their planes are, which I thought was quite funny.
We always talk when we go to WWE Premium Live events. We always talk about product placement, and this is a very different kind of product placement to what we've had before.
Washing.
Yeah, because it's because it's not just capitalism. This is actual. Hey, we want Saudi Arabia to look attractive to the world,
so tourists can come in and see how great we are.
I mean, they certainly have great architecture. I will say that.
Yes. There's a lot of great neon lights at night. Definitely.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the wrestling. Yes. So my one big takeaway from this match was the botch. It was when Sami Zayn went to kick Devlin up for a vault. It was what you call it in the UK. I guess they call it a backdrop in the US. But instead of rolling forward, he kind of spearheads and then realizes he's about to land on his face, and he twists and hits the back of his neck on the ropes. That was quite scary.
Yes, and I imagine that's where he got his massive red wart, probably from Matt Byrne, most likely. And it was quite noticeable. As soon as they got a big zoom in on it, the entire crowd I was in went, oh, that's very, very gross. The other thing I want to mention is also the weird selling from McDonough when he was sent into the turnbuckle. He did a weird flip
Oh yeah,
and sold. Like I
that
think I
was
think I think Ollie put this best in the podcast review where he was selling as if he was Shawn Michaels in 2005 at SummerSlam.
I was about to say that. Yeah, it's exactly
It's
what he did.
very much akin to that. I didn't clock it really until you mentioned it. No, he did sell a lot weirdly in this match. Um, but I thought this match was fine for a pre-show match. It's exactly the kind of thing you probably expect. Went just under 10 minutes. It was back and forth kind of, but Sammy got the, clean win in the end, and the crowd were happy, and that's sort of all I've got to say about the match, really.
Yeah, yeah, it was a pretty standard match. And
Yes.
as you predicted, Sami Zayn won the match.
Mm-hmm. He
Got a
did.
big pop.
I was, yep, he did. This went pretty much how I expected it, really, in terms of production, in terms of presentation.
Mm-hmm. It did. Now,
It
speaking
did.
of winning, I just remembered that I have to announce something. So this is hilarious because we have these with the predictions. We have these rules where with the Genesis pick and the Androzani pick, the idea of it is to offset the idea of if we have too many of the same predictions, it might allow some deviation and it'll add like an up the ante to it. But by the end of this show, the amount of points we had were both 7.5. So it was a draw, therefore I retained the title again.
I feel like we're having a lot of draws. We might have to rework the format.
I don't understand. I fucking...
We're drawing a lot. I feel like I would like to know how many times we've drawn, because I know I've only won once, and you've won, I think, probably once or twice properly, and we've drawn like twice. It feels like.
Well, Wrestle Dream, I
They've
won by...
all been very...
With Wrestle Dream, I won by half a point.
Yeah. It's always very close.
Yep.
And now you've won, like, what, 5 in a row now? 5 shows in a row?
That's right. You only won the first
I won
one.
the first, and I held it for a day. You've now held it for, like, 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair with Fastlane, I got 4 and you got 1, so I clean sweeped you.
Yeah, I had a really bad time. Fastlane, I had a very bad time.
Yeah, with All Out and what was the other one? Payback. I got 14.5 and you got 10.5.
Yeah, because we combined the scores. Yeah,
with All In, it was a draw. We got 7 all at that one, and I can't remember what it was for SummerSlam, but I know I won it.
Yeah, I think you just won it because I predicted Finn to win. I think that was one of the results. I can't remember if you did as well.
I don't know.
Mm.
Anyway, so yeah, it's a bloody draw again.
Yes.
We may need to add a third element, an of, instead of a Genesis and an Androzani, we also need an of as well.
Yeah.
Because if it's an odd number, then we're more likely to end up with a different result, I guess.
Mm-hmm. We might have to make title matches double 2 points and regular matches 1 point, maybe.
That's possible. That's possible.
And then obviously there's more risk putting the double points on the title matches,
or just
for bigger swings,
or just the main event, I guess.
True.
All you need is one. You don't need, because there's some pay-per-views where like every match is a championship match.
That's rare, though. To be fair, I think that's quite rare.
I would say
especially
we could
nowadays.
I would say with the next one, we should just make it the last match on the card will be double points.
And we won't know until the actual show happens. That's true.
Yeah.
Unless they announce it. But yes. But yeah, now to kick off the actual show with what I was quite surprised opened the show, but at the same time, it's probably something they did last Saudi show, and they probably do a lot when Roman's on the card, where they opened with the World Heavyweight Championship.
Yes, they also had 8 minutes.
Yes,
they had 8 minutes of a video package before it too. That was pretty well produced on the whole, but
yeah. I very much enjoyed that. They announced that this was going to open the show on the pre-show, So as soon as we all found out, I said to someone next to me, um, "That means Damien is not cashing in." And yeah, instantly, because he wasn't going to cash in, even though they teased it later, which we'll get into just a little bit. I knew instantly, no, he's not going to cash in because they're not going to have him cash in and win, and then face Cody later in the night. It's just something they're not going to do that. So my thought of this match in terms of what could happen went out of the window.
Yeah, well, because anything can happen. I don't know. Anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation.
Yes.
This match had very, very good presentation. Yes. It felt like a big deal.
It did, yes. This was a very good match. I think this is probably in ring the best match on the show.
I'd be inclined to agree. I'd be inclined to agree.
There is one contender for me, though, definitely in terms of in-ring work.
Yeah,
which we'll get to later.
I know I think I know the one you mean. Yeah,
yeah. But I thought this match was very well constructed, was very back and forth, and I think the finish of this match was very well done. And I think both of them look very good in this match. What I liked about this match a lot is Drew taking a lot of shots at Seth's back, which has sort of been the ongoing story with Seth in terms of his reign, and it's sort of wearing him down more with each month that passes. I think Drew going into more of a heelish, which they have been building up for several weeks now, which they seemingly is now going to take full effect at some point soon. Drew taking more shots at the back, a bit more heelish, which I think is been very good. And I think in this match, he did a very good job with it. And I think the actual finish of this match makes perfect sense for what Drew is going to go through next. I would imagine he will turn heel through frustration. So I was a big fan of this match, and I thought the finish was a very good finish and suited for what they've been building up to.
Yes, and one of my favorite moments was when he walked up the steps with Rollins and he gave him a backbreaker on the apron.
Yes.
That was a great moment. But they definitely have told a dual story with this. They are continuing the story of Rollins' back, which was a big feature of the Nakamura feud. And on top of that, McIntyre is, they are slowly transitioning him towards a heel turn, and they're doing a really good job of that. On top of that, also, both members have been tied in with the Judgment Day story on Raw. Both members have been... Rhea Ripley has tried to seduce both into the group. And that also connects to what happens after the match with Damian Priest as well. So there's a lot of character threads running through it. On top of that, it's also a well-worked match. I think these two have really good chemistry. They are compatible Pokemon types, if you get what I mean.
Yes. I think the last time they faced each other was at Money. I think they mentioned this in commentary. They faced at Money in the Bank 2020. I think for the WWE Championship.
It was during the COVID years. I was not watching.
Yeah, I think they said that in commentary. I might be wrong on that, and I'll double check. But I think they said that. But yeah, these two, more times than not, are very good in the ring too. Drew is always great in the ring, and Seth always does a very good job in these kind of matches.
Mm. Yeah, well, they both have a lot of main event experience.
Yes, definitely. Yes, they did. They did face at Money in the Bank, and Drew beat him, for the championship to retain. About 20 minutes. So they actually gave this a bit. They gave this about the same amount of time. Yeah, but once Seth won, Damian Priest music hits, and everyone is like, "Ooh, maybe." I didn't think he was going to cash in. I thought something definitely was going to happen, considering the ref. And you'd think they would learn this by now, considering Money in the Bank has been a thing for 20 years. Still don't grasp what the wrestlers want to do. that quickly. They take a lot to process. You want to cash in? You want to cash in now?
The
Which is
Carmella
always
one.
quite strange. Yeah, Damien clearly waiting for the spot to be attacked. Uh, Eventually does get attacked by a hooded man, seemingly, and it is revealed to be one Sami Zayn for a big pop.
Yes, it is. And the weird thing about it is, as I said, I paused the pay-per-view after the match had ended, like with Rollins and McIntyre. I went back and watched the pre-show. I finished the kickoff match with Zayn and McDonough, and then I hit play on the pay-per-view, and then Zayn immediately appeared. So I saw him on the kickoff, and then he just appeared. I was like, "What?" It was such a weird bit of continuity.
So yeah, what then happens is he steals the briefcase and runs out of the crowd. This feels very mid-cardy to me in terms of a um storyline progression, if you
Kind
could
of
call it that.
it's a little bit. It's not exactly the same because a briefcase is different to a title, but it kind of reminds me of in 2015 when Ambrose stole the belt from Rollins at Elimination Chamber.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
But I guess in this sense, it's not just him, because Ambrose did it out of sort of pettiness, whereas with this, it's more so. I think the commentators did a decent job of explaining that Zayn is trying to stop the Judgment Day from controlling the whole brand.
Yeah, I would just say that it doesn't leave me really intrigued, really. Going forward.
The thing that's weird about it is that it's not really a babyface thing to do.
It's not in a way, but the Judgment Day are so they're very, as I think we saw later. They are massive cheats and established to be massive cheats. So Sammy trying to get one up on them I'm for it. I just don't think stealing the Money in the Bank briefcase is that interesting.
I feel like it would be more babyface to just like attack Priest rather than steal the case.
Yeah. And you can just definitely. But yeah, and then Seth just sort of laughed it off, and that was it, and that was the opening match.
I mean, my one of my favorite bits of, I guess, examples of doing something with the case is that SummerSlam where Strowman comes down to the ring, and Brock takes the briefcase and throws it up the stage. That was actually quite funny. Because it's not him running away with it; it's him just throwing it out and going, "Just get out of here." Don't need you.
There was actually one spot in this match that I forgot to mention that I thought was very good. At one point, Drew is down, and Seth in the corner tries to amp himself up. He goes for a Phoenix Splash, misses. Drew hits a Claymore for a close near fall, which I thought was a very good spot there. I didn't bite on it, but it was still a very good sequence that I thought was quite well executed.
Yeah, it was the one point in the match where I had a slight bit of doubt. I was like, "Ooh."
I didn't. I was very confident in Seth retaining here, just in general. So I didn't really buy into it. But again, still very, very, very good sequence.
Well, I mean, I was confident in Seth retaining, but the thing is that sequence would make a hell of a finish to a match.
The Claymore is such a, in terms of when it hits, it's seemingly such a devastating move, and I think they've done the Claymore. I think they've done a good job in making it feel like a game ender.
Well, it's certainly protected, especially on TV.
It is. When Drew does not hit it, sometimes it can look a bit silly, just naturally, because it's hard to make that not look silly when you miss.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought I think the Claymore is it's like a spear in terms of it's so sudden, it can come out of nowhere in a lot of ways, and it's full of momentum. That I always find Drew when he hits it, he always looks quite good.
Yeah. Well, when he misses it, it looks like he slips over in the middle of the air.
Yes, that's what it looks like. Yeah. But yeah, that was the opening match. I thought I quite enjoyed it as an opener.
Yep.
Now, what happens next, I thought was quite funny. So we had the fatal 5-way for the Women's World Heavyweight Championship. So we have Nia Jax comes out, Raquel Rodriguez with her now, you can't see her back at all, which I thought was quite funny. You had Shayna Baszler and you had Zoe Stark. And then you had, which the crowd I was in at the bar laughed this up, this Rhea Ripley entrance, which is meant to be apparently, as I've learned, a sign of with the amount of people that came out showing, I guess, all the status of the person. So, which is, I guess, quite a big thing considering the person that is about is a woman. You know, Rhea Ripley being presented very, very well, I guess. The crowd I was in, me included, thought this was just a bit funny because it turned into the fact that it was one person would come out, stand for a couple of seconds, then go to one side. Another would come out, stand for 5 seconds, go to the other side, and it was back and forth. Once it got to the sixth person, we eventually went into like how many are they going to come out. Eventually, it turned into a way for every person that came out, and it went on for quite a while.
Yep. I remember hearing that music and thinking, this is tonally does not at all fit Rhea Ripley.
I guarantee you that went at least 3 minutes in terms of just purely people coming out, standing, then go to one side of the entrance ramp. It was just quite visually, it's quite funny.
Well, it's just weird to have. It's just weird to have this traditional Arabic presentation and then for it to go, "This is my brutality." Like it's just a very weird transition.
Yeah. It just if you should definitely look back on that entrance on the reaction because the entire place was just going, oh, and then I think at one point people started trying one more time.
Yeah, but I will say though, once the entrance started, Rhea Ripley got a very big presentation.
She, for all the faults, and there's been quite a few faults, I think, during her reign, I don't think she's been defending it enough and not being presented enough stories where to really make this reign memorable in terms of actual like matches and rivalries. You can't deny that Rhea Ripley is probably the most megastar wrestler in the women's division, I think, personally. There's no one who gets the same sort of like unique presentation that she has. And let's be honest, she is fucking awesome. She is so cool. And yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she looks like a...
The match, however, I was not that into, unfortunately.
I was going to say, she looked like an anime villain on this show.
Yeah, in a lot, yeah.
Especially the hair.
I'd say so.
The hair reminded me a lot of anime.
Yeah, the hair and the makeup, the whole sort of look. Yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah.
There was one spot in this match that I actually quite liked quite a bit in terms of camera work. So there's a bunch of women on the outside. I can't remember who. I think it was like Nia Jax, Raquel, and maybe Ripley as well. Zoe Stark is in the ring. She's trying to amp herself up. She then runs to the corner, top rope, springboard, goes to the outside, and the cameraman is underneath her and follows her into her landing and then falls over, which I actually thought was quite a nice sort of dynamic camera work sort of thing, which I actually quite liked. It's quite unique. You don't see that that often, and there's probably a reason for that because the guy fell over as he was doing it. So yeah, that's the most memorable part of the match for me, to be quite honest. Other than Nia Jax got booed by the crowd, I didn't have a reaction because I think Nia Jax is quite shit. I don't care about Nia Jax at all.
Yeah, there was a moment she like super power bombed off the rope and she landed right on her ass.
I don't remember that. That shows you how much I remember from this match.
The one spot I really liked though was when Shayna Baszler got 3 women in a submission at the same time. That was quite good.
That was good. That was a very good. It made Shayna look very cool because Shayna is cool, and they need to present her as such.
Yeah, but they did all the
And
typical things you expect from a match like this, like the
yeah, you
Tower
got
of Doom spot and
Tower of Doom. Yeah. The finish I thought was quite strange because on one half you've got, I think, Rhea Ripley was on the top rope. I think with Zoe Stark, going on the Riptide, ready to hit the Riptide, and I think Shayna is on the floor. Raquel Rodriguez's thought process is, this is my chance to pin, while Rhea Ripley is just above me with a human being ready to drop her. So it doesn't make Rodriguez look very smart. It makes her look quite stupid.
The thing that's weird about the whole Nia Jax thing, and like sort of the way she just doesn't really fit, is that you get a spot like where Zoe Stark hits that big finish she does. It's like almost like a backflip GTS.
That was cool. That move and Ripley's selling of it was fucking awesome.
Yeah,
so such a great sell.
They do this big impact move, and she does that big sell. They go for the near fall, and then Nia Jax walks into the ring and just taps her with her foot, just like lightly taps her. And that's the weird thing about Jax, is she doesn't feel like she doesn't have the same energy as everyone else, and it's every time she's involved, it's also just bizarre.
It's quite cringe. But she wasn't involved in the finish at all, so I guess they are going to eventually have Ripley versus Jax at some point, probably at the Rumble, maybe. I'd imagine they're not going. I don't think that's going to be a Mania match. I think they're going to eventually build up to maybe Ripley versus Becky Lynch. I think would probably be the right match, maybe. And then I think the other one would probably be Bianca Charlotte. I think.
Yeah, don't be surprised if Ripley holds the belt till Mania.
No, I think she definitely is holding it till Mania. If they're going to have hold it like Bianca, they're going to have hold it for a year.
But I feel like WrestleMania is going to be the first time I watch a title match with her, and I'm going to she might actually lose the match.
Yeah, I just don't. I think they're pretty. Yeah, it's going to be till Mania she holds it. I'd be shocked if she lost it before now, since we're so close to Mania season anyway.
I mean, it's been so many months, but it still feels like her reign has just started.
Yes, and that's sort of like I mentioned, that's sort of the issue with it. A lack of like actual rivalries. Her only memorable ones are Natalya, which was essentially a squash feud, and Raquel Rodriguez, who was also in this match anyway. So yeah, in terms of an actual like rivalry in her reign, it's not been good. She looks good. She looks great, but the actual reign itself doesn't have that much to really dig into in terms of any sort of depth.
I would love to see them do. I would love to see them do a mixed tag War Games match with Rhea Ripley as part of the Judgment Day.
That would be cool, but they're probably not going to do it, unfortunately.
No, they probably won't, but it would be great.
It would be. Yeah. So, and I think that was it. I don't think there was anything else to the match in terms of going out of it. It was the match. It happened. I didn't really care about it.
It wasn't terrible.
Other than a couple of spots.
It wasn't
terrible, but it wasn't that interesting.
The big takeaway from the match is that Rhea Ripley is a megastar. That's it, really.
Yes, that's we already kind of.
And I want to see a match with her and Zoe Stark 1-on-1.
Yes, I'd be up for that.
It just might
definitely would be up for that.
It might take some time.
I just don't think it'll be a pay. I don't think it'll be a pay-per-view match, unfortunately. I just don't think they. And to be fair, Zoe's still relatively new. I feel like you can have a good match on Raw.
But the other thing is that
a bit of build up.
The other thing is, I'm pretty sure Stark is still a heel as well.
At this current time, yes, she is, and that's another issue. She's still relatively new as a heel. She debuted at the last Saudi show like 4 months ago.
Yeah, although you could argue some of the Judgment Day are tweeners anyway.
I would say they're heels. I don't see them as.
I'd say Dominic Mysterio is definitely a heel.
I think the most tweener is probably Ripley, just because she's really well liked.
I would say Damian Priest could arguably be a tweener.
I think he's very much a heel.
I mean, at least now, not like a year ago. Like the year ago, he was a solid heel. But I think his his sort of that brief time when he was sort of having issues with Finn Balor, I always felt Priest was the less heelish of the two. I always felt
Oh, I
Balor
always
was
thought it
the
was Balor, I guess. I always thought Balor.
Interesting. Because I always felt like Balor was trying to use Priest and it wasn't working. And Priest was just getting fed up of feeling like a lackey.
I would say I feel that's more with Balor because there was always that hint of Damien cashing in at some point and making it feel like more Finn was more sympathetic in that moment. So I feel like when you're here with the cash in and you have in their situation a stable member going for the belt, I would say the person actually going for the belt and actually trying to win it in an actual match is a bit more sympathetic.
I guess that's a testament
so
I guess it's a testament to the characters, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's weird to
Judgment
think
Day
now.
the last sort of month or so have really they've gone off the boil just a bit, unfortunately.
Well, I think
it's now a running meme now of how much they just interrupt people.
Well, I must think
I
think wrestling as a whole has gone off the boil in the last month, to be honest.
Yeah, like we mentioned in the predictions, it's in a sort of lull period. But after SummerSlam to probably now hopefully with the build up to Survivor Series, it can start to pick up a little bit.
Well, I mean, if
CM
Punk returns at Survivor Series, there will be
which is now being heavily rumored.
There will be no lull if he's there, because CM Punk makes wrestling not a lull all the time he's there, I think. At least since 2011.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's weird to think that of all the members of the Judgment Day, the one that probably had the weakest run was Edge, and that's down to Vince booking.
Because they were booked as spoopy goths.
They were way too serious. Too serious.
Once they got more dorky, like last year, is when they really started to pick up steam.
It was Clash at the Castle. That's when they really started to get good, and that's when Dom joined the group.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, after that, we had Solo Sikoa versus John Cena in a match where I predicted the correct result because they weren't stupid enough to do what you suggested.
Yeah. I'm glad I was wrong.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so here's the thing. This match was very boring until the finish, let's be honest. It was a very boring match where Cena did all of his selling because he's not good at it. And yeah, it was sort of back and forth. They were wrestling between hitting finishes at some point, which, a bit of a back and forth. But the actual talking point of his match is the finish, because I think this made Solo Sikoa look like an absolute monster, which I'm very glad they did this, because I remember he eventually finally hits a running spike, which looked great. And I thought he's either going to go for the pin and he's going to kick out, or he's going to go for a second and Cena's going to dodge in here and win.
Yeah. I think it's a real testament to Solo Sikoa as a young performer, because maybe not in terms of like storytelling and psychology and all that, but if we're talking purely from a physical athletic point of view, I think Solo Sikoa carried this match on his back. He did so much work when it came to things like the lifting, the strength, all of the stuff that required a lot of athleticism. Solo Sikoa really, really shone throughout it. Like there was that one Uranagi he did to Cena that looked so good. It was like picture perfect. He
looked good. He did.
He was hard hitting and physical, and it was, there was a lot of brutality to it. And as you said, the finish with the Samoan spikes until Cena was basically dead on the ground.
Yeah. So he hit the first, as I mentioned, then hit a second, which was like, oh, okay, he's going to hit a third, and then he's going to kick out probably. He hits it, but he doesn't go for the pin. And at this point, I'm like, why aren't you going for the pin? He then hits a fourth. And then I'm like, okay, surely he's won this and he's going to go for the pin. Then he starts hitting multiple and multiple and multiple spikes. 11 spikes he hit, if I counted correctly. And then he goes, pins him, and he wins the match. And everyone was like, yes, this is a really good fit. This is good. This is the right result. And it's a very interesting one too, because it makes Solo look like an absolute monster and makes him look like a very credible threat because he won clean
Yeah.
as a whistle.
What I love about this, and again,
So,
this is Solo Sikoa's in-ring style, and his character is very much a tribute to Umaga. And
yes,
what I love about it is similar to Umaga. What makes Solo Sikoa a heel isn't that he cheats; it's that he's violent. It's that
he's a violent monster.
he doesn't end the match when it's right. Like, you know, he doesn't end the match like for a tactical, oh, it could end here. He wants to absolutely beat the shit out of his opponent to the point of no return before he ends the match. He wants to inflict that much pain on them.
Specifically requested by the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns, to take out Cena, like, permanently.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about the promo that Heyman cut on SmackDown, where he talks about, while Cena isn't the greatest, he's not, let's be honest, but in kayfabe, he's the greatest of all time. Paul said he's not the greatest of all time in the ring anymore, but what he is great at is his talking, his voice. But if Solo was to take out his voice, he wouldn't be able to use it in the way that he normally does, which I thought was quite interesting now looking back on, considering now how much brutal force he got on the neck from all those spikes.
I also love how
So it's quite interesting what they've done here.
I also love how they chose not to have Paul Heyman come to the ring with Solo. They just had him go out by himself.
Yeah, I think they did a fantastic job in terms of making Solo look like an absolute credible threat to anybody. Because taking out Cena, who is always like, I predicted he was going to win because they always do this. He's Big Max John. This is a big match for him as they've presented it. And normally in these situations, he would go on and win. They made Solo look fantastic. And I hope they do now is this not. I'm not expecting him to go for the title, face Roman for the belt at all until at least after Mania. But what you start to do now is make him, as time goes, as we probably get towards Mania, just before Mania, probably you have him split or tease it just before. And I think Luke suggested this on the Reservoir podcast, but having him face after, or was Ollie? I can't remember. Have him face like a big star in some, probably like Brock Lesnar at Mania, and have him go over. Which I think would be massive for him, and I think would be a really good indication of this guy is very close to the main event. You can have Solo in the build-up to Mania beat all of the opponents that Roman faced over these last couple years, but win clean. You can have it go against Rollins at some point, have him lose the belt, and then maybe go against Rollins maybe at some point, win clean. Maybe over Drew, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens probably as well, I think is a good example. And eventually face Brock at Mania or someone of that caliber and go over. And I think then at that point, you would have made a credible main eventer in Solo, who eventually could probably face Roman. And I would say make him go over at that point too. Really, this next year, I would like to see where Solo is this time next year in terms of his position on the card. Because I think he's still got a lot of work to do in terms of in-ring psychology and probably storytelling. But in terms of right now, I think they're doing, with this match specifically, I think they've done wonders for him in terms of booking. And hopefully they keep up this momentum going forward. Because I think there's a lot of potential with Solo in terms of making him a proper monster force in the main event scene.
Yeah, he's by far the best call-up of the NXT 2.0 era. There's no question about it.
Without doubt.
Yeah. And I loved how after the match, they had him put the spike up to the camera and he speaks in Samoan. He speaks in his own language. And like the way that they present that whole thing is that he's not dialoguing with the people because obviously he's not speaking in English. But what it's doing is it's him looking at it, his spike, and realizing, look what I have done with this weapon of mine. I have brutalized, in kayfabe, the greatest of all time. I don't believe Cena is, but there is a portion of the fans that do believe that, and so for in kayfabe, you can make a convincing story out of it. But Solo really acknowledges this is the kind of power I have, and that's part of him as a character sort of realizing what he's done and what he's capable of. And then after that, while Cena in ring is far past his prime, and as an athlete, he just doesn't have as much anymore that he used to. What he does have in spades is acting, and that whole sequence where after the match, he wakes up from being knocked out and looks down, the camera goes up on his face, and the Saudi fans are all clapping for him. The sort of the expressions that Cena gives is there's a lot you can see behind his eyes in his performance. It was like a scene out of a film. It was very well done. That whole last bit where he walks back, and he doesn't do the whole thing of like wave to the crowd and be very, clapping himself. He doesn't do all that stuff like they did with, Sheamus at Clash of the Castle, because it's a very different kind of loss. This is a very existential career kind of loss. It's very much Cena being like, is this my last match? And I don't think it is his last match, but I think it's his last match for a long time, probably until Mania or even further. I don't think we're going to see Cena in the ring for quite some time. And I think him leaving WWE for an extended period will really sell this defeat, and it will make Solo Sikoa look like a star. So I think with what they wanted to achieve in this match, with both Solo Sikoa becoming a star and with Cena having his like sort of last few matches, his last few runs in the ring, and closing out this period of the writer's strike with Cena, I think they achieved that a lot, even if the match itself wasn't great, because obviously Cena's very limited. I think they did the best with what they could do with what they had. And I think that's all you can really ask for.
Yes.
Because I don't blame Cena for, number one, being old, and number two, not being able to train all year round like he used to. Because he has another job. This is not his first job anymore. It's his second job. So even though I wasn't a big fan of the match, I still give it a thumbs up anyway, because of what it achieved. So yes. Well done.
I think that what they did do in terms of the finish was done very well.
Yep. And then immediately after this, we got by far the worst thing on the show. Miz TV and the Grayson Waller effect colliding with, I can't remember the name of the guest. He's a significant actor. I believe
he's a big movie star in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I'm sure he's great, but this was a pile of cringe. And I think what they're trying to do with this is they're trying to, because there's been hints of Miz turning babyface recently, and because he's been, paired with Gunther, and I think they're going to probably do a Miz Gunther match at Survivor Series. But what they tried to do is they tried to have Miz babyface and have him be the lesser of two evils with Grayson Waller. And I just think this is just so corny. This reminded me of something out of like early 2010s PG era Raw. It was very like, get a celebrity on a talk show, have a the babyface beat up the heel, and have
Brady on Miz TV gets KO'd by Randy Orton. Yeah, that's
Hugh Jackman broski punches Dolph Ziggler. Like, it's that kind of thing. It was very, very sports entertainment.
I was just rolling my eyes constantly and looking at my phone.
Yeah,
all of this segment.
This to me felt like
a single shit.
This to me felt like something straight out of Vince McMahon's WWE. 100%.
It was just very apparent that they wanted to get. Rumors were that they tried to get Cristiano Ronaldo in a segment on this show, but I imagine he was. I can't remember if he was playing football during this time. I think he was. I think he was something. But yeah, then it feels like this was like the backup plan, I guess. But yeah, this was lame. This was really lame, and I don't have no more comments on it.
It's not just because of the premise of it and the celebrity involvement. It's also just because I just don't think that the Miz works as a babyface.
No, I just don't. Yeah, I don't even hate the Miz. I think Miz is a perfectly fine wrestler. I think he's a good talker when given good material. But I just don't care about these kind of segments on this show. I don't.
And they're desperately trying to make Grayson Waller like the next Miz, but Australian. He's like an Aussie Miz, and I just not for me.
I like Grayson Waller, but I feel like they keep having him come out on these segments on pay-per-views and just like, oh, he brings the heat, brother. But it's gonna get to the point where I don't really care.
He was better in he was better in NXT than he has been on the main roster. I mean, part of that is because he had to recover from an injury, but it feels like they're still just keeping him on these talk segments.
The best thing he's done is sort of be in a tag team with Austin Theory, but even then they've only had a couple of segments here and there.
I will say, I'm sure he really enjoyed it, but he had the pleasure of having one of Edge's last WWE matches, so good on him for that, I suppose.
Yeah. Just have him wrestle a bit more and maybe have a feud. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I talked before about how Seth and Drew are like compatible Pokemon types. If you have Miz and Waller in a feud, I feel like they're just too similar, and it would just feel like
and it's too there's too much anti-heat, I guess, in a way.
Well, it's like
it wouldn't clash properly.
It's like what they said at the commentator said at the Slim Jim Battle Royal at SummerSlam. It's just like it's that Spider-Man meme of they're pointing at each other.
Yeah.
But in that case, it worked because they were working together as a team.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and then of course they always have to have every celebrity do the fucking people's elbow, and it's so shit.
Because that's the famous person.
Oh yeah, and he pulled up his elbow and he pulled up the wrong sleeve, and he had to go the other side.
Hit it with the other elbow. Oh god, that was funny. I didn't even notice that until it was pointed out to me.
I would much rather had Sami Zayn and JD McDonough on the show than this.
Yeah. Or just cut it entirely and just have the show be less, I guess. Just have it more tighter.
Have it be short.
Anything, you can do anything as long as this segment was on the show. I wouldn't have cared less.
I will say we've mentioned before about on pay-per-views like WWE pay-per-views matches not getting enough time. I actually think a lot of the matches on the show got the right amount of time. They definitely paced it well in terms of the matches. So there's hats off to them for that. Yeah, and at least this segment didn't go ridiculously long like some of the previous show segments did. You know, like the Cena Waller one at Money in the Bank.
This was still way too long. This was still way too long for it. It's so good.
Oh yeah, well there was nothing really.
It wasn't like tediously over like prolonged than it really should have been.
And it also didn't have the so bad that it's entertaining quality of the Shane Snoop Dogg shit from WrestleMania.
No, that was just that was insane. That was just fucking crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they need to stop having celebrities doing the people's elbow because it's getting old now. I think they just think it's like, oh, it's the one move they can do that's safe and it's going to pop the crowd.
Yeah, just you can just do a stunner every now and again to mix up a little bit. Come on. I feel like you get more of a pop from a stunner, to be honest, than a people's elbow. And that might be just me, but I would rather see a celebrity get a stunner than an elbow. I find that more funny.
one of my favorites was I think it was either '09 or 2010. It was during the guest host era. I think it was 2009 actually. And there was a guest host of Raw where Sheamus spine busted him through a table in the corner. That was awesome. He like actually went like, yeah, I want to take the full bump.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then of course there's those WrestleManias where Kane keeps tombstoning Pete Rose, and it happens like 3 years in a row or something.
That's great.
Yeah. Anyway, all of that pain was solved somehow. It's still weird to say it, but somehow Logan Paul made the show better, because he's actually really, in the context of WWE, he's actually really good at what he does.
Mm-hmm.
We had Logan Paul versus Rey Mysterio. In terms of storytelling, it wasn't as good as the McIntyre Rollins match. It didn't have as much character work in it.
No.
But as a athletic contest and as a spectacle, it was really well done. Except for there's one thing in this match that I guess I'll have to wait and see what the ramifications are when we get to like SmackDown, for example. But I am curious as to why Santos Escobar put the brass knucks back in the ring after he took them off the guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing.
I said that instantly when he did. I was like, well, that's stupid. Why would you do that? And what I hope they're doing is that he did it slightly on purpose.
Yeah, but the thing is, the only problem with that is that why did he take it off the guy in the first place if that's what he's doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's
yeah.
I feel it's a bit strange. I think Logan's selling of that moment though was very good. His sort of glee in scene, that was great, and allowing Ray into a false sense of security by letting him hit the 609, but then letting him hit the springboard for the actual finish.
Yes. So anyway, going back to the start. Go ahead.
Yes.
No, go ahead.
So yeah, I feel like at the start of this match, I felt it was a little bit clunky at the start. It felt very much that it was a bit over rehearsed in a lot of ways. But I think once they got going, the match I felt was very well constructed, and the dynamics of Logan being the big man who's quite athletic against Ray, the small man, they clashed very well. They hit a lot of great moves on each other, and I thought this match was very good.
The one thing I've noticed about Logan Paul is he does the Young Bucks thing of like taking moves from all his favorite wrestlers. So he did like the Jericho Lion Salt. He does the Buckshot Lariat. He also did Hangman Page's Moonsault Fallaway Slam off the second rope.
That was awesome. That was very good.
Yeah, then he did the Ultimate Warrior's Splash.
Yes, he did.
It was fucking hilarious.
He hit a very good splash. He got a lot of airtime on it.
Yeah. He's got a really good high jump. And then there was one other one as well. I can't remember what it was, but he takes all these moves from these wrestlers. And it's a very interesting thing that he does. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what were you going to say before?
One thing, I've got two things to say. The first one is I really like the sort of exchange spot of him just patting Ray on his head, just belittling him. But then they did a little Irish whip exchange. But then once Ray stops himself, does a very sarcastic clap to Logan, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah.
And quite a nice little dynamic. The second thing is, I think the most notable spot of the match was when Ray went for a springboard, was clearly going to miss because he was way too short in terms of the distance. Logan actually catches him, and not only that, got down to his knees to make sure Ray does not spike his head, which I thought showed a lot of great awareness from Logan and shows that he knows what he's doing. So I have great respect for him in that moment for not only doing it, but making it seem like it was a part of the match in terms of transitioning into another move. I thought that was...
Yeah.
It showed that Logan takes a lot of care in these matches, and he is putting a lot of effort into it.
Well, I mean, what I would say is
very commendable.
He's always been a great athlete, but I actually think as a storyteller and as a pro, I actually think this might be his best performance in ring, because I feel like ever since Money in the Bank, when he had that botch with Ricochet, which was like his first big mistake in WWE, I feel like Logan Paul is paying a lot more attention to what do I do in these dangerous situations, because I don't want anyone to get seriously hurt. And I almost did. And I noticed that I'm just so impressed at how quickly he's learning all of these things. Because, you know, a year ago, like when he faced Reigns, what was impressive about Paul was the way he was able to keep up with it, and the way how athletic he is, like the impressive things he can do in the ring as an athlete. But what we are seeing 1 year later is that he can not only do that, but he can also act facially. He can be aware in the ring of safety. He can tell stories. He's starting to be able to tell stories in the ring. Like, it's not just his opponent that's helping him carry it. Like last year, I feel like Roman Reigns did a lot of the work at helping Logan tell a story in the ring. Whereas I think here, Paul is actually being able to start to contribute to a match. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting seeing that side of his growth that I didn't expect to see this early. You know, he's only been doing this for a year and a half. Think about that. A year and a half he's been doing this, and he's at this level already. It's actually, he's one of the fastest rising talents that I think the industry has ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's genuinely unbelievable.
Freakishly really good at this.
Yeah, and he's not even full-time. He does like a few matches a year, and he's already this good. He's already one of the talents on the show that I always look forward to seeing his match. And it's not just because it's a spot fest. It's not just because it's, you know, it's because it's a fun athletic spectacle. It's also because he's getting really good at telling stories. And that's the scariest part of it, because that's the thing that takes the longest to learn as a wrestler. That's the thing that they say it takes 3 years before you can start to really understand how to put it all together. And he's already doing it at this level with Rey Mysterio, and it's only been a year and a half since he stepped in the ring. I just can't believe it. Like, it's insane. And in this match, he is now the United States champion. And I think the timing it couldn't be better. I feel like if it had happened before this show, you could argue it could have been too early for him to win a belt. But I feel like now is actually a really good time for him to be a champion. So, yeah. It's just so crazy, because before wrestling, I couldn't give two shits about Logan Paul. I'm not a celebrity YouTube guy. I don't like the controversies around him and his brother. I don't like the whole culture of that lifestyle. It's not my thing. But man, as a WWE superstar, he's got to be one of the best in the world right now. And it's seriously crazy to think that he can only get better from here. And honestly, don't be surprised if one day we see a main event WrestleMania. I think it's possible.
If that's the sort of ambition that he has.
Yeah. It's going to take a lot more. It's going to take a lot more commitment from him, I think. Oh, yeah. But, geez Louise, he really is proving a lot of people wrong that thought things about him when he first came to the company.
Definitely.
And
I'm very intrigued what they do with him as United States champion now.
I love the way he tried to gaslight Rey Mysterio at the end of the match. The way he
that was very good.
He came over.
Great detail.
He did like the fake babyface thing where he put his head to his hand behind his head, and he's just like, "It's okay, man." He did the thing that Adam Cole did to MJF after All In, except he was full of shit, and Rey's just like, yeah. And then Rey Mysterio is just like, "I know what you did. I know what you did to me."
You know
what you did.
You know what you did, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Fucking brilliant. That was. Yeah. Yeah, I think like the last sort of, outside of the Santos thing, I think like the last sort of 5 to 10 minutes of this match was probably my favorite thing on the show. It was so good.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely the right winner, I would say. I think there's a lot of potential out of this reign you could get. And eventually you can have someone like LA Knight beating him at Mania. And having him have this great moment. And you can have this sort of like Logan doesn't actually really care. He's just using it as a prop to raise his stocks up, which is sort of, I guess, the public perception of Logan in a lot of ways. So to maybe build a story around that could be very interesting
Yeah,
over these next sort of like 5 months or so.
yeah, and they can sort of do the thing that they did with the first half of MJF's world title reign, where they can say, "Oh, you don't defend the belt like ever."
Yeah, only when you're
Yeah.
forced into doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be very interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, hats off to them. And again, I said this. I think I said this in the Payback review. Rey Mysterio is like nearly 50 years old, and yet he's hanging in there with Logan Paul.
Yeah,
Despite the fact that he's had like fucking 9 knee surgeries or something ridiculous. He's rehabbed his body to the point where he can hang with Logan Paul in the ring. It's unbelievable. So, yeah, really, really happy with this. Yep, good stuff. And then after this match, the crowd kind of died.
Yes.
And it was a shame because I actually think that Io Sky versus Bianca was a decent match. I actually thought in the ring they did a good job. But
a lot of power moves.
But I
from
just
Bianca, as per usual.
It was missing the energy of the crowd. They just weren't into it.
It was, yeah. It was. These two put a lot of work into this match, and unfortunately, the reception of the crowd it dipped massively. So it didn't really have that sort of edge to it, to really make it a sort of hard hitting, like energy affair. Unfortunately, which sucks because I thought this match was pretty good. But it was, I think the most exciting part about this whole thing was the ending, which I was very hyped for because I remember after the match thinking we've talked, me and you specifically talked about this a couple months back, and somehow I completely forgot about it once November came around because we talked about it. Kairi Sane returned to WWE, and it was great. What I loved about it is because the way that it was positioned, that Bianca was attacked from behind, because I think she had Bailey for a finisher. Someone pulls her away, and I think a lot of people would assume it was Dakota Kai. I didn't think that, but I couldn't recognize who it was because it was from the back. But then I realized, oh wait, I think that's Kairi Sane. I was pointing and like hesitating, speaking out. I was like, oh, Kairi Sane.
It's also because it's also because she's different to how she was when she was last in WWE. This is very much her stardom Kairi character. Like with the obviously she had to have the long attire for the Arabian, sanction and everything, but the presentation, this is the the sort of heelish Kairi Sane, the much more like not so much leaning into the sort of the fun pirate side. This is very much the more deceiving side of Kairi Sane, and she looks great. She's in great shape. I'm glad she's back because she's fantastic.
Yes.
She's very, very popular in Japan. Very popular. And I love the story that the commentators told at the end of Kairi Sane and Io Sky are obviously good friends. But when Kairi Sane was last seen in WWE, the person who basically kicked her out of the company was Bailey. And this is creating a rift in Damage Control. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we see Io and Kairi versus Bailey and Dakota when Dakota's back. I wouldn't be surprised if that tag match happens. But yeah, great to see her. And this just further bolsters the SmackDown women's division, which is definitely one of the strongest women's divisions we've got in the industry at the moment. So yeah, great to see her back. And that elbow drop is just incredible.
Very good. It's awesome. One
Yeah.
of the best in the business.
Yeah. I also just, I've always thought she has great presentation, like when it comes to like her hair and her makeup and her dress wear and everything. She always looks like not only looks like a star, but she has an almost like a mystique to her in a way, like an alluring sort of charisma. So yeah, very happy with this. The right result too. Io Sky retained the belt. This is not the right time for Bianca to win it.
No.
And yeah,
Very
this
happy
is
with this.
definitely it's definitely an intriguing twist on this story. So I was very happy with the ending.
As they apparently they mentioned this on commentary, Bailey is the one in kayfabe who took out Kairi Sane, and that was the last time we saw her. So I find that quite interesting as this little connection.
Yeah,
And
that is down to, I imagine, there's someone that Triple H hired when he took over creative in 2022 who was specifically hired for the purpose of long-term continuity. And I imagine, if I was to hazard a guess, it's probably that person or that department that probably came up with this. That said, hey, last time we were here, this is what happened. We could link her in with this story. And it's a really good idea.
Yes. I'm very intrigued what they do with this sort of Kairi Sane, Io Sky potential faction, maybe. I thought it'd be quite interesting. And what I hope they do is have Bailey try and buddy up with Kairi Sane in a way, maybe these next sort of like month and a bit. I'd say I don't think don't over like prolong it, but eventually you have sort of Io Sky turning on Bailey, and Bailey maybe reverting back to Bailey, or maybe just a face version of this character. I don't know. I'm very intrigued what they do going forward with this.
Well, the other option is that she stays heel and Io Sky goes babyface.
That's also potential. I think the more interesting thing would be Bailey trying to keep them all together, but it's turned on by Io Sky. I think that'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, well, I think it's clear that Dakota is the most heel of the three of them, as it currently stands. If you were to compare them,
yes.
Yeah. Part of that is probably down to the fact that she got injured when they were still a heel faction.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm very interested to see. I think it's very evidently clear the difference in depth between the SmackDown and the Raw women's divisions. The SmackDown one is very strong at the moment. It funnily enough has less women in it, but it has more going for it. Well, obviously not the tag team division because that's just dead. But in terms of the singles stuff, the SmackDown women's division is very strong at the moment. Now that you especially got Kairi Sane added to it. Whereas the Raw division very much is just Rhea Ripley at the top and everyone is miles below her. Except for maybe Becky Lynch. But Becky Lynch has been in the NXT division recently. She's been away from it. So, yeah, don't know what to do about that. I imagine when they next have a draft, I imagine they're going to have to try and get Raw back into better shape again. I mean, really, what the Raw women's division is missing is a name like Sasha Banks. That's the big hole in that side.
Yes, I would agree.
Anyway, after this, we had Cody Rhodes versus Damian Priest.
Yeah.
Which was the same length as the Fatal 5-Way match. They were both 11 minutes and 5 seconds.
Yes, exactly. Exactly right there. Well, Cody came out. He did his entrance. Everyone went whoa. And then he won the match. That's kind of my thoughts about this match, to be quite honest.
It felt like a Raw match.
This was very much a Raw match. In terms of quality, it wasn't really main event worthy, but it was a match that happened, and they didn't really do much from memory.
I was expecting more story.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this maybe like 2 pay-per-views ago, but I'm just so sick and tired of the 3 crossroads as a finisher in
I
and of itself.
immediately when I saw that, I thought of you.
Yeah. Oh, how sweet.
It's like that moment
Yeah.
in Journey's End with Wilf. He's like, every night we go on that hill, I'll look up at the American Nightmare, I'll see the 3 crossroads, and I'll think of you. And every time you see the 3 crossroads, it's David Tennant like crying in the rain.
I just when as soon as he hit the first, I'm like, I then sighed and just rolled my eyes, and I'm like, this is the one thing about Cody that I really don't like, and he's the only person who's sort of doing it right now, because there was a time at one point where finisher spamming was like Brock was, I think, the most blatant person doing it.
Yep.
Once upon a time, Cody just seems to be taking it to another level where it's just the 3 crossroads in of itself is a finisher, and I don't like it. It's quite annoying, and it feels very overindulgent, and
It's
that opinion
unnecessary.
isn't going to change anytime soon, because he's gonna do it in the next pay-per-view. He's gonna do it against Roman, most likely at Mania, and win the match that way. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they won't do it and face Cody. I don't know. But it's just, I'm sick and tired of it. I just am. I don't like finisher spamming when done literally in every single one of their matches. In a Brock match, it's when it was done right, it made him look like an absolute monster. It's not like the solo finish of this pay-per-view. That's a finisher spamming done right, because it's the character who's a heel and a monster brutalizing the face of that match and just taking them out. Cody just does it as a transitional move into another transitional move into the actual finish. That's what it is, essentially. And I'm bored of it. I'm really bored of it.
Yep. It's unnecessary. And it's the thing
So
with it.
unnecessary.
The thing with it is that, what makes that finish from Battleground 2013 so good is that he hits 1 crossroads to Rollins and wins the match. And that's all he needs to do.
Just one big crossroads and they win the match. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
The triple is not needed.
The 3 crossroads spots, you can only really do it just like realistically, like twice a year, maybe. And even then, that's a bit excessive. For me personally, when you do it every pay-per-view, then it gets ridiculous. Yeah, that's all I've got to say about this match. I've got nothing else to say really. You had Jimmy Uso come out to stop the interference from Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio, which, hey, great to see Jay, because I've enjoyed what Jay has been doing the last sort of month. I guess being on his own, he's on his own, and all that stuff.
Yeah. I just hate the way Michael Cole says, "Oh my God, it's main event Jey Uso."
Main event Jey Uso.
Like they just have to say the nicknames every time.
Yeah.
It's the greatest of all time, John Cena.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Cody won, and then that was it. Everyone went woe again, and that was that. I've got literally nothing else to say.
They could have cut this from the show.
They could have, and yeah. But then everybody would be like, why isn't Cody on the show? And then I would be like, why don't you make an interesting match?
Yeah.
Book an interesting match with Cody instead of a Raw match.
What match do you reckon he should have had on this show?
Well, I was perfectly fine with Damien. They just didn't have an interesting match.
Yeah.
It wasn't that dynamic, and that's the issue with Judgment Day right now. Is it's other than probably the Drew stuff and the Seth stuff that Rhea is sort of dealing with right now. In terms of like Dom, Finn, and Damien, their stories right now are sort of on spinning wheels, and I imagine it's going to start picking up now towards War Games because Judgment Day against a bunch of faces is probably going to be the match.
I saw
I'd
a
be really shocked if
suggestion.
it wasn't.
I saw a suggestion online somewhere that sounds really funny. Someone said, what if instead this opened the show, and at the end of the match, or near the end of the match, what allowed Cody to win was Sami Zayn stealing the briefcase and Damian being distracted. And then later in the show, after the World Heavyweight Championship match, Sami Zayn runs out with the briefcase and tries to cash in to waste Damian's contract, and then Damian stops him.
That though, I'm not into. I'm not into that because that definitely doesn't seem like something Sammy would do at all.
No, it's not.
And logistically, I don't care if it's like, oh, but they make the rules.
Well, actually,
fuck off.
Actually,
That's
no.
Stupid.
Actually, no. I have a better idea. I've just thought of a better idea. Instead of that, so obviously Sammy had stolen it. The idea was that Sammy would steal it at the end of the Cody match. At the end of the World Heavyweight Championship match, you have Damian come out to try and cash in, but they don't let it happen because he doesn't have the briefcase.
He doesn't have it. Yeah, basically he has to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even then, that's less flaw. That's less with flaws. I will say. Yeah, the original idea, I'm definitely not into.
If he brings out, I think it's Adam Pearce would be the person to bring out. He brings out Adam Pearce.
That would be funny. That would be funny.
And he tries to get Adam Pearce to give him an excuse why he doesn't have it.
you know what? Yeah, you have to physically give the contract because that's just legally binding. I guess you could say, which would be quite funny. Yeah. Yeah, this match just didn't have any heat at all. And despite I think this match on paper could be very fun and interesting. But they didn't really do anything interesting, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
It didn't make Damon look great in defeat. And it's the same thing that every Money in the Bank holder goes through where they just lose all these big matches because it doesn't matter. They're going to eventually win the championship by their cash in anyway. So
I just don't like that.
No, I hate it. I think it's stupid because it makes them look stupid and bad. So when they eventually win the title, it's like, oh, they'll eventually lose it soon.
God. Do you know what was great about Edge in 2005 when he had the briefcase? Is he won a lot of matches before he won the belt.
Because he was a credible wrestler.
Now, it was a bit easier for them to do that because his main feud during that time was with Matt Hardy, and you can beat Matt Hardy pretty easily.
Yeah.
And he didn't win a lot of matches clean, I will be fair. Lita did do a lot of cheating for him.
He's finding ways to win.
Yeah.
He's finding ways to win, which is important.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Obviously, he was never going to beat Cody, and that's why you try at the very least you make Damon look strong in defeat, but they don't really do that.
Do you know who I think would be a really interesting Money in the Bank holder just because of his character? Would be Karrion Kross, because he has that whole ticking clock thing, and the whole idea of the Money in the Bank is it's ticking down to the point of when you're going to cash in. And I can imagine segments with Scarlett putting the hourglass on top of the briefcase. Of course, that would require...
The briefcase is a massive hourglass.
Yes, but also that would require them booking him on TV and having him win matches and having him booked in a way that makes him seem credible.
Yeah.
And also booking him in a way to where the crowd cares.
I don't remember the last time he was on TV.
He had a video promo a month ago or something. I can't remember when it was.
Yeah, the last time I remember watching him on any show was SummerSlam, I think.
Yeah, I know he had a big injury to his leg at some point with the Styles feud.
Right.
But I don't know. He's jacked though. He's been working out.
It's just making me think when they're actually going to do the cash-in. Generally, at this point now, I don't know when they're going to do it. Because it won't be a Survivor Series. It probably won't be Rumble. So it has to be before. That's very interesting, though. Like, it'd be interesting for them to hold it until as close to Money in the Bank next year as possible, because
Well,
obviously we've never done that.
Well, one thing I've always said is we've never had a contract expire before.
Hmm. And I probably would never want that to happen, but I would like the idea of the story being that it's close to being expired. That's not
Yeah.
something we've done before, so it'd be very interesting if I don't think they are going to do that, because I don't think, because they're not WWE in terms of thinking about those sort of interesting ideas. They never do them, so I doubt they're going to do it.
I mean, the closest we've
Maybe
gotten to
Trips
that, Carmella, Dolph Ziggler, Seth Rollins, Edge, they're kind of the only ones that have gone that far.
They're the only ones that got even close, and even then, those weren't stories that were told, unfortunately, in terms of getting close and expiring.
Because they were still a few months off.
Yeah, you were still at least 3 months or so off, depending. Yeah. Yeah. I just don't know when they are going to catch in. I felt that this was probably this pay-per-view was the highest chance of it happening for a while, and now I don't think it's going to happen this year. The only chance I think it will happen is if it's on a random Raw.
That's what I was going to say. What if it happens on TV?
That's the only. I feel that's, to be honest, that's more possible than it happening on pay-per-view at this point in time.
WWE doesn't have WWE doesn't have a December pay-per-view, do they?
As far as I remember, they don't.
They didn't
last year.
And they didn't have it the year before because they had day one.
Yes. So
I think Triple H has.
As far as I'm aware, they're not having a December pay-per-view, yeah.
I think Triple H has gotten rid of the December pay-per-view.
That's interesting. In terms of a permanence.
AEW hasn't, but they're doing one.
Like Winter's Coming and
they're doing World's End on the 30th of December, but there's an actual storyline reason for that, and that's because MJF's in kayfabe his contract, and possibly in real life, his contract expires like 2 days after. So the story they're most likely going to tell is that if he retains the belt, he's going to walk out of the company. I wouldn't be surprised if they do MJF versus Wardlow on that show.
Possibly.
Anyway, Crown Jewel, we have the main event, which is LA Knight versus Roman Reigns for the undisputed title. Yeah. LA Knight was massively over with this crowd.
He was very much over, as expected.
And unlike the last Reigns match, this one didn't actually go too long. This one went 20 minutes.
No, it was only 20 minutes, which is quite short for a Roman match.
Yeah, but I think it's long for an LA Knight match. This is I think this is the longest outside of, Battle Royals and Royal Rumbles and whatever. I think this is the longest singles match he's had in WWE.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
And I think he held his own. I think in terms of a dynamic, it's not the most interesting Roman match ever. It's probably in that sort of like mid-tier kind of match, because I think what it missed, because this is the sort of first just a challenger sort of match for Roman in a long while, probably since Drew last year at Clash of the Castle. And even then, that was sort of sparked with emotion behind it. This felt more with the build-up of LA Knight is a fast-riding star who's now challenging for the big title for the first time, and that was sort of the story.
Yeah, it was very different for Reigns. He's been very entrenched in stories for the last year. So this was a more cold match for him by comparison. But what's interesting is, compared to a year ago, is that he has a lot less people around him than he used to.
Yes.
And I think I said in the predictions that I was interested to see how LA Knight would go in a match like this in a main event of a pay-per-view. And like you said, I think he managed to pull it off. He held his own.
Definitely.
This seems
I
though.
think
I don't
yeah.
know if he could go much further though. This seems to be his limit.
Yes, seemingly. Um, my main issue with this match is the fact that Interference once again won the match. Really, Interference is really the champion at the moment and retained. Um, and the issue is that these finishes for Roman are not very creative. It's the same Interference where you have Solo comes out, Jimmy comes out, opposition is distracted, Superman punch, spear, Roman wins. Um, I would rather they try and be more creative with Roman. And it's the sort of thing that I pitched after he lost Money in the Bank in the tag match. And unfortunately, they haven't gone this route. Roman being more brutal, being more psychotic in matches, and maybe going into more. He cheats, he can cheat, but being more beating down his opponents in that way. And it was obviously an idea I had. They haven't gone down that route. It's the same formula. And I don't have an issue with the formula within the match itself. I just think the finish is very underwhelming because it's the same finish we've seen many times in this past year. Um, if they had Roman actually physically cheat himself instead of allowing the others to cheat for him, at the very least, it would feel like Roman is trying his best to cling on himself. He's sort of slowly having to be less and less. The people around him are less reliable, so he's having to do it for himself, but he's still cheating. That could be something to at least make it feel a bit more fresh in terms of creative finishes.
Mm.
Unfortunately, it's not. It's the same finish as we've seen many, many times, and that's sort of the sort of bitter taste I have in my mouth after this main event.
My favorite part of this match happened before the match itself. So there's a few things to say about this. Firstly, you have all of the people in the crowd with the yeah signs. There was lots of them. It reminded me a lot of the Daniel Bryan signs from like 2014. So that was great. But then once Roman got in the ring, it was awesome because like, this whole show you had Byron Saxton announcing, which was quite different from what you usually get. It was very not this what you'd expect because Byron Saxton's usually a commentator or an interviewer. But what happened was that Roman got into his corner and Byron was standing there and he raised a hand to him. He's just like, get out of my corner. Like, it's so funny. And then right after that, when they were announcing the names, LA Knight started trash talking to Reigns in the ring, and Reigns started trash talking back, and they had this little exchange to each other. That was one of my favorite things on the show. It just really got the energy pumping before the match even started, and that was excellent. So I think it's interesting because you mentioned with Logan Paul versus Mysterio, it kind of struggled in the first half, and then it got going in the second half. I actually think this match had the opposite, where it was at its best at the start, and then it kind of lost its way as it went. If you get what I mean? Because I thought this match was really, really good, like with the entrances and the trash talking in the ring, and then the very start of the match with the taunting and all that. That was all well done. But like you said, once the interference started, that's when it kind of fell apart a bit. It wasn't, it wasn't terrible in the same way like the Cody finish at Mania was, but it just kind of, it's more of the same. And I think I like what you said about if Reigns had like low blowed him behind the referee's back or something, that would have been better. But
it
yeah,
would make Roman feel like he's more involved in the actual finishes.
Yeah,
rather than the people around him.
But I just wanted to point out that moment where Roman raised a hand to Byron Saxton because it was so spontaneous and it was very in character. Get the hell out of my corner.
Roman antics when he's really good they're here, and then Very good, like mocking the crowd, doing the LA Knight chants,
Yep.
just the normal stuff. The good hard hitting blows throughout, and some good spots here and there. Great, like top rope suplex from LA Knight that he does.
Yeah, I've
which is
always
really
loved
good.
that. I've always loved the big when he does the big high jump into the superplex.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's weird to
Yeah,
think
so
that I'm pretty sure LA Knight's older than Roman Reigns. It's weird
I
to think that,
imagine
isn't it?
he is, yes.
Because LA Knight's 41, and I think Reigns is like 39 or something. No, he's 38.
That sounds. Yeah, that's yeah.
It's strange to think that. But
I hope they try their best to keep up momentum with Knight post this match.
yeah, because a lot of people could say that the only way is down from here.
Uh-huh.
I will say one thing I loved was he hit the blunt force trauma, and Jimmy Uso put Roman's leg on the ropes, and the facial expression Knight gave to Jimmy Uso when he realized you screwed me out of the title. That was very, very good acting from LA Knight there.
Yeah.
What's great about LA Knight is he makes you believe that he actually feels that way. He's not just putting on a performance. Like it's not just a kayfabe. Like it's obvious you can see through it. Like when LA Knight is giving a facial expression in a match, I believe that he feels that. He's very convincing. And one thing that I don't think he gets enough credit for is how he handles serious moments. A lot of the time when people talk about LA Knight, they talk about the fun stuff, like the cockiness, like the catchphrases, the sunglasses, the joking around, all of that stuff. The stuff that people often talk about when they compare him to Dwayne and Austin. But it's the moments when he takes it very seriously that I think he deserves more credit. He has a lot more range than people say.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was that promo he had with The Miz, where The Miz really challenged him, and he took his sunglasses off, and he took it way more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this
One
match,
thing I did like that they incorporated into the production was, I can't remember, it was the opening promo to a package to the show, or it was the high package for this match, but there was the great shot of Reigns in LA Knight's glasses they used in the promos, which I thought was quite cool, because it's a very cool shot of Roman in the lenses of his glasses. I thought that's quite cool that they used that, because it's quite a very satisfying sort of framing.
Yeah, and I loved one thing that Reigns does a lot, and he's done this since the pandemic, is the talking in the ring. And the way he was saying he had LA Knight in a grip, and he was saying to him, "You're just a flash in the pan." And he was like bullying him, and
yeah, because that's what Roman's best at, in terms of, because he's a insecure champion who does his best to berate his opponent into submission, practically.
Yeah,
and that's why I wish we transitioned more into him being so desperate to keep the title that he goes to more brutalizing methods into keeping the championship, instead of it just being pure interference by the bloodline.
And I loved that moment after the match where he was bent over his belt, looking at his belt, and like being like, "I've still got you." And Paul Heyman reaches out and holds his hand, almost like to be like, there, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. It's almost like he's giving him a therapy moment.
Yeah.
Because you can tell Reigns is feeling like how much time is left on this reign. You can feel he's starting to crack now that, Jay has left him. Jay Uso is a very big part of Reigns' confidence as a champion. And without his full family surrounding him, without his ego, without his bloodline, without the people at his table, you can tell there's chinks in his armor. So yeah, I've always liked those details.
I wish they fully stuck with. There's just putting Jimmy back in the bloodline and sort of making him the like comedy lot of sort of bodyguard kind of thing is just not working, unfortunately. It's just not.
Yeah.
And it's just very strange. I just that turn at SummerSlam was presented so seriously, and it's now for at least from the Jimmy perspective is sort of kind of a joke, which is just not ideal.
No, it's not.
And it's sort of it's what's kind of holding this story back at the moment, which is a big shame.
Yeah, the only thing they're really getting right about it is Solo Sikoa.
Yeah, and even then, before this pay-per-view, he was sort of dwindling the last sort of month or so. And Jay is the only thing that's similarly on the rise, and even then it's this sort of transitional period at the moment, and all the Judgment Day stuff is not as high as it probably could be. So yeah, there's issues surrounding it all, unfortunately, and it's off their own making because they probably should have. I want to say this every pay per view, but they just should have had Cody win at Mania, and we would probably avoid all these problems.
Yep, 100%.
Like, imagine this show. It was Cody versus Priest for the championship. I don't know.
It doesn't really work when he's Mr. Money in the
Maybe.
Bank, but I guess so.
But at that time, maybe he's not Money in the Bank. Maybe he doesn't cash in. I don't know. But just ideas floating around. Different Cody challenges at this point. Maybe especially considering Cody's reign doesn't have to be particularly long.
Well, I also the other thing about that is that not only is it about Cody not winning the belt when he should have, but he was supposed to have a long feud with Bray Wyatt, and then Bray Wyatt passed away.
Yeah,
and that's really made a massive hole in Cody's calendar. And so now we're having to like put even more filler in his arc than we were originally going to.
Yeah.
Because I imagine the Bray Wyatt feud was intended to be a distraction for him that was going to fill out the calendar before he gets to the road to WrestleMania again. Anyway. But yeah, overall, I thought this was a pretty decent show. And it had some really good moments on it. Not an amazing show, but I think I liked this more than Payback and Fastlane. I would say that much.
Yeah, I would say if I was giving this show a ranking, I'd probably give it like a 6 or a 7.
How do you think this compares to the other Saudi shows?
I think Night of Champions was better than this show.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if my memory served me correct. Yeah, I definitely would, because I think the main event was awesome. And the Rollins match with AJ Styles, I think maybe slightly edged it. Just maybe, because I think at the time I was a lot more into Rollins as potentially being champion.
I think this was probably better than last, even though Reigns versus Paul last year was great, and so was Bianca versus Bayley. I think this is probably better than last year's Crown Jewel.
I would say this is at the very least on the top end of the Saudi shows. Definitely.
Yeah. What about compared to Elimination Chamber 2022?
I remember that show being quite bad on the face of it.
Okay.
I can't remember. I remember the Elimination Chamber match itself, the men's one being quite meh, and the women's one being okay.
Oh, I remember it had those long musical performances or something like that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
My memory of that pay-per-view is not great. But in terms of this show, and I think these last two have been... They've been up there, I think, for the Saudi shows, because they've been, on the face of it, very good cards. And most of the matches have definitely delivered. I think this had one or two matches. I think this realistically had two matches that didn't live up to. Well, one of them really, and the other one just wasn't that good until the finish, which was the solo Cena match.
I remember.
Yeah.
What about the? What about the Crown Jewel 2021 was the one with the King of the Ring and the Queen's Crown. And it had Roman versus Brock. It had Becky, Bianca, and Sasha. It had Goldberg versus Lashley. RK Bro versus AJ and Omos. Mansoor versus Mustafa Ali. Edge versus Rollins in a Hell in a Cell. I think
that was a good match.
I think
that was a good match.
I think I remember at the time, people said that Crown Jewel 2021 was the best Saudi show so far at the time.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree that Big E, Drew McIntyre was great, and the Hell in a Cell match was very good as well.
And a lot of people really liked the women's triple threat as well. Becky, Bianca, and Sasha.
Yeah, with that match, that actually probably would be. I can't remember that match that well, but I imagine that was a very good match considering the women involved.
Yeah, and Mansoor versus Mustafa Ali was probably. I haven't seen it, but yeah.
I can't remember it, but I imagine it was a pretty decent match.
RK Bro was really over at the time as well.
They were, yeah.
Yeah. Although it did end the show with Roman versus Brock. So.
That went 12 minutes.
Yeah. But I think at the time, people said it was the best Saudi show, but I think it's been bettered by. Definitely by Night of Champions. I think people will probably say Night of Champions was the best Saudi show.
I would probably say so.
Yeah. The 2021 Crown Jewel is probably the best one of the Vince era.
I would definitely say so, yeah.
Mm.
But yeah. That was 2023 Crown Jewel.
Yeah. Yeah, this one is probably in the top 3 Saudi shows, I think it would be fair to say.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely would say.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have much more to say. The next pay-per-view, I believe, is AEW Full Gear, right?
I think so, if I just double check.
Full Gear is the 18th of November. And Survivor Series is
the 25th.
Yeah, 25th.
So yeah, we got 2 weeks and then 3 weeks.
Yeah, so next will be AEW Full Gear. I hope that they reveal who the devil is on that show. I think they probably will. But when we do the predictions for Full Gear, I think to up the ante, because you know how we had a draw this time, not only will we do the Genesis pick, the Androzani pick, and double points for the main event, but I think we'll also do a prediction for who we think the devil is as well. I think that would be a great addition. And then for Survivor Series, we'll predict, do we think CM Punk is returning on the show? Imagine if you predicted CM Punk as the devil and then also predicted him to be on Survivor Series.
Hedging my bets, making sure. Imagine neither is the case. Fucking hell. You just get 0.
Yeah. He just pulls a Rick Rude and he's on both shows.
Yeah. The fact that there's even like a sliver of like people be like, oh, but what if they've worked us all and he's actually the devil?
It's to quote Sean Ross Sapp, it's not a fucking work.
It's not a work.
He's been throwing pot shots at AEW on the MMA shows when he's been doing commentary.
Yes, he has.
He recently bashed Collision because he said it was better when he was in charge of it. Which to be fair is true. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there has been some good Collision stuff since he left it. It's not all him.
I haven't watched Collision in quite a while.
Yeah, I remember there was a Roderick Strong Darby Allin match that was really, really, really great, and it was from the Collision after he left. I think, or 2 after he left, and then there was another one where I think it was the Christian Cage Darby Allin match. I think Darby Allin has been the MVP of Collision since Punk left, to be fair. But I also think part of that is because they've had a lot of the Collision guys on Dynamite now, and now Dynamite just feels like the A show. Anyway, that's for the next time when we do the predictions for Full Gear. That has been our review of WWE Crown Jewel. Hope you all enjoyed. We'll see you all next time. I bid you adieu. Good night and goodbye.